بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين والنعمة الدائمة الأبدية على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Inshallah, we are going to take lesson 4, Ilm al-Rijal. We were discussing the encyclopedias. That means we are discussing the Sughra. Where can we find the Sughras? Now, whenever we have confusion in Sughras, we have to use the Kubras. So we have to use the general rules to general principles. And those are the Kubras, like every metal expands with heat. And those Kubras we are going to discuss now and to see the part 2 of this this Kubras. So now in this we have an introduction of Kubra. Who are the first scholars? Now we know that early ones who compiled the narrations about the narrators. Now, who are these? They wrote these principles. And how did they write these principles? And what are these principles? Who are the contemporary judges? And the general definitions? And what are the 2 types of rules? And evaluation of the narration. Is it an ijtihad or is it a narration? We are going to check this in this lesson. And the general, basically the general thing is that the principles, we said the rules, where do the people, they derive the rules? They extract it from. Like for example, people, when the United Nations says that people of Yemen, they are hungry, they are starving to death. Okay, how did they find out? How did they find out this Kubra, people of Yemen? So whenever I see a Yemeni, I will apply this. Okay, this he must be starving to death. He must be starving to death. That is because they took it. They saw the Yemenis are going through that. They made a statement. Now this statement became what? Became something which I can apply whenever I see a Yemeni. For example, like those people, they say every Muslim is a terrorist. Obviously, this is wrong. They see a few bunch of crazy people exploding themselves, whatever doing, and then they take a general statement. Now every Muslim suffers because whenever they, oh my goodness, now he's going to blow himself up. So that is the problem in generalizing the things. I just give you an example. How do they come? Now in science and knowledge, that is in social studies. Now in science, sciences, how do we do that? We look at different categories, you see, and then we see the common thing, and this common thing we extract it. We heated the iron, we heated the gold, silver, aluminum, all these things. We heated, we saw they expand. So we came to this conclusion, every metal expands with heat. Now if I have a metal and I don't know, it is unknown. In that case, what will happen? In that case, sorry, there's a truck passing by. Okay, anyhow. So I have the voice is clear now. So in that case, like for example, an unknown metal, we don't know. Does it expand or not? Is it metal? Yes, it expands with heat. Don't worry about it. You can use it. Use the heat on it. So, for example, Arabic language, there was no Arabic grammar. They extracted it from the words of the Arabs. So they saw the past tense. The past tense is like all a sound at the end. Daraba, kataba, qala, kutiba, So they said fa'al madi, past tense has to end with a fatha sound at the end. You see? So that is what we have in, this is the way they extract the common rules out of it. You see, even in English, any language, at the beginner, they did not have this grammar. This grammar is, later on it came to fix the foreigners, to fix the speech of the foreigners, because foreigners, they come, they have not learned the language since the childhood. So what happens? Finds difficult. So we have to teach them the grammar. So this is how we speak. Whenever you use this word, this is the common thing. Whenever you use that word, this is the common thing. So this is how it works out like that. So we are going to now take the part 2 of Ilm al-Rijal, which is the principles. The principles included in encyclopedia before. So before we had encyclopedia, the principles were there. Even Sayyid al-Khuy has kept in his introduction to Ilm al-Rijal, all the principles there in Muqaddimah. Okay, so he has basically the Kubras are in the Muqaddimah, the first volume, and then he starts mentioning the Sughras all the way. So the principles included in the encyclopedias, Hilli, Baha'i. Now let's take we mentioned this. Let's go to the first slide. Part 2, the evolution of the principles of Ilm Rijal al-Hadith. So how did it evolve? How did it became like a science? Okay, by usul Ilm al-Rijal, we mean the usul means principles. Usul, principles of the narrators science, Rijal al-Hadith. As we mentioned before, Ilm Rijal is the study of the narrators in two ways. One is the study of the narrators in the encyclopedia. We find out the sughras of the narrators, sughra, and one is the study, other part is the study of the principles of the general principles, which are used to verify the identity and the status of the narrators whenever we have doubt. That is Kubra. Okay, we apply. In this section, we will study such rules. So we are done with the rules of Sughra, or the books of the Sughra. Now we take the Kubra. So they were included in the encyclopedia. Before we did not, it was not a separate science. These general principles or rules were found in the encyclopedias in the beginning. It was not an individual science in the beginning. As we mentioned, the first ground rules were set by Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam and the infallibles alayhi salatu wasalam. And then their companions started to put further ground rules by studying the lifestyle of the infallibles. They used to see how did Imams deal with doubtful situation of the narrators. Okay, they started looking at the practice of the Imams alayhi salam and how did they used to deal with the narrators. And some logical rules were also derived by these scholars of narrators, the ones who spent their whole life in collecting the narrations. So now, Sheikh al-Tusi, why is he a scholar of narrator? Because whole life he's been collecting the narrations, and narrations has all the narrators. So he's collect the narrations, and he tries to find out who the narrators are. Okay. So basically, the scholar expert in hadith, collecting the hadith, automatically by default becomes expert in knowing the narrators, because the hadith narrators are part of the narration. So they started looking at the common things in the sanad, in the link of the hadith. What are the common things, common sharing characteristics? These are the ones who spent their whole life in collecting the narrators and comparing the qualifications, such as Kanani. Remember the first person we said was Kanani, before the time of Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, Abdullah al-Kanani. Kinani or Kanani. Then like Najashi and like Sheikh al-Tusi. And as mentioned that the first individual book written in this science as an encyclopedia was by Kanani, who died in the minor occultation. Al-Barqi was in the time of Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, as I mentioned. Then Hilli and Baha'i. The first book which discussed the general rules and principles in their encyclopedia of narrators were Allam al-Hilli in his Khulasa. These principles were called Fawaid. Fawaid is plural of Fa'ida. Fa'ida is benefit. Okay? So now we had these rules, but they were inside the encyclopedia. inside the encyclopedia, inside the Asma, Rijal, and Tarajum. So who separated it? The first one to separate the rules or the principles, fawaid, as an individual book from the existing encyclopedia in his time was Sheikh Bahauddin Al-Amili. We call him Sheikh Bahai. So Sheikh Bahauddin Al-Amili was the one who is the famous and known by Sheikh Al-Bahai. So who can tell me where is the grave of Sheikh Al-Bahai? Just give me a guess. So he's Bahauddin al-Amili. Amili is from southern Lebanon. Okay? So southern Lebanon, Jabal Amil is highly populated by scholars, Shias and Shia scholars from long time ago. So, but where is the grave of Sheikh al-Bahai? Any guess? Let's see the guess. Where in Iran? No. It's in Mashhad of Imam Rida alayhi salam, not in Qom. It is, there's this place which is called Dar al-Ibadah, because they have made this Dar al-Shifa, Dar. So there's a place beside the Darih, there are chambers. One of the chambers, you see there's a grave. People, they go and they do the Fatiha and pay respects to that grave. That is the grave of Sheikh al-Bahai. Okay? So Sheikh al-Bahai al-Amili, I'm just trying to relate these things in your mind, was the first person, and he died just before 400 years. So that it was in the time of the Majlisis, so 1031 after Hijrah. The title of this book was Fawaid Rijaliya, beneficial facts or principles in the science of narrators. So this is how the science evolved from Hilli to Bahai, from 700 Hijrah to 1000 Hijrah. And who has this highest number of these principles? There's this Fawaid al-Khurasani, the first who included the highest number of the principles was Abu Turab Khwansari, who included 500 principles or Fawaid in his book called Fawaid Rijaliya, Fawaid, beneficial facts or beneficial points in the science of narrator, principles of narrators. This scholar was specialized in this field. He died in 1346, about 100 years before. Now we are 144 something, so he died before 100 years, before a century from now. Who are the contemporary Rijalists, the contemporary scholars who scrutinized and discussed deeply the principles of Rijal or Fawaid, was none other than the giant of the giants, Sayyid Abul Qasim Al-Khoi, in the preface of his book Mu'jam Rijal al-Hadith. So Mu'jam, in the beginning of the book, he mentions this. He rejected many of the weak principles, as usual, scrutinizing, filtering, principles which were practiced by the previous scholars in this field. He died 1413. So now we are like 14. If we are after 2 years, 1443, we will have 30 years passed from the death of Sayyid al-Khoi. So 1413 to 1423, 10 years. 1423 to 1433, 20 years. 1433 to 1443, 30 years. Yes, so we are going to complete after 2 years, 30 years of demise of a Sayyid al-Khu'i Quddasa Sirro, and his taqleed is still being, I'm one of his muqallideen. People are still stuck in his taqleed, and that is, it has never been like that. People, they have not done taqleed to usuli scholars like for 30 years. That is too much. And hopefully it will end with the coming of the 12th Imam Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, as many scholars or some of the scholars has predicted. And God knows best, because it was predicted that the last final marja, that means the global marja, will be as-Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khu'i. So his marja'i has not yet ended. Still it is floating. So the contemporary Rejalist, the contemporary scholar who scrutinized and discussed deeply the principles of Rijal or Fawaid was Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khu'i in the preface. So he said he died in this. The living Rijalis is Sheikh Ja'far Subhani. He's in Qom. He's doing a lot of extensive work in Rijal, who's studying this field and is specialized in it. He has book of Kulliyat fi Ilm al-Rijal. Kulliyat, kulli means kubra, general principles. So Kulliyat is plural of kulli. Kulli is kubra, that means kubrayat. Kulliyat fi Ilm al-Rijal, the general principles in the science of narrators. The general definitions. Note, kulli means kubra or general rule, okay? And juz'i means sughra or specifics. So what are these definitions which we need to know before we move on? We need to know certain definitions. Number one is at-tawthiq. At-tawthiq is from thiqah. At-tawthiq is from thiqah. Thiqah is trustworthy. So, tawthiq, entrusting or giving someone a description of trusted person. This definition has been used in two meanings. One is a general meaning, which means a reliable person, which could include a just as well. Just, trusted in everything, or a good person, or who has a good character. This is a general meaning. But then there is a specific meaning in this Rijal science. Another, and the specific meaning is the one whose tongue or words are trusted, who never lies. He has never ever seen lies. So we have general term thiqah and we have specific term thiqah. And in this science, it has been used as a general meaning. That means a just person could also be said that he is thiqah. Rijali, what do we mean by Rijali? The Rijali, the one who is specialized in the field of studying the narrators or principles used in defining who and how, defining the identity, who is he, and the status of the narrator, how is he. So that is the work of a specialist who is Rijali. I call it Rijalist. A faqih, al-faqih al-adil. Who's al-faqih al-adil? The jurist, just jurist, who is known to be just in his character and has reached the level of ijtihad, the level of deducing the laws from its resources. Mutaqaddimin, mutaakhirin. You all know that. Who can tell me what is the difference between mutaqaddimin and mutaakhirin? Let's see the answer. Mutaqaddimin, before Sheikh al-Tusi, to be accurate, thank you for that. To be accurate, it is Sheikh al-Tusi and those before him, not before. When you say before Sheikh al-Tusi, that means Sheikh al-Tusi is not included. So Sheikh al-Tusi and those before him. Yes, mutaakhirin you can say after Sheikh al-Tusi, because Sheikh al-Tusi is not included in the mutaakhirin. Thank you. So, so early ones, the early Rijali, Sheikh al-Tusi, Sheikh al-Najashi, and the ones in their time or before them, such as Kashi, Ibn al-Ghadairi, Kinani, and all these, Kinani or Kanani. Mutaakhirun, the later Rijalis, the ones who came after Sheikh al-Najashi and Sheikh al-Tusi, such as Hillis, the Hilli bros, Radwanullahi alayhim, the Hilli, Ibn Tawus al-Hilli, and his students Ibn Dawood and the Allama. Some principles, okay, general principles, kulliyat or kubra. The difference between fawaid, beneficial point, and qawaid, qaida, faida, qaida. Faida, beneficial point, qaida, general rule. So what is the difference between them? Some of them they say qawaid, some of them they say fawaid, qawaid, fawaid. So he says qawaid or kulli is a strong proven rule. Every metal expands with heat. That is qaida. Okay, that is a general rule which can be implemented on all these specifics or sughras or juz'is which fall under it and can lead the researcher to a conclusion. That is qawaid. So what is fawaid? Fawaid, beneficial points. Okay, like for example, the metal, they might be different, they might be applicable for some, not applicable. These are extra things. So besides every metal expands with heat, you'll say, but this iron has, remember that some metals, they require higher temperature, some metals, they require lower temperature. These extra things which you say are called fawaid, beneficial points. Faida, beneficial point. That means it is qaida plus an extra beneficial points, which may give the researcher more information about the qaida or the rule or the principle. Two types of rules. Principles or the rules, qawaid, of the narrators are divided into two categories. The rule of evaluation and the rules of conflict. So now we said that the ilm al-rijal is divided into two. Now picture with me, draw in your mind the way I'm drawing. Ilm al-rijal means sughra, kubra, specifics, general rules, kulli, juz'i, kulli. So we have encyclopedia here, general rules here. Now this general rule divided further. Some are rules of evaluations to evaluate a narrator, some are rules of conflict. So when one scholar conflicts with other scholars, what should we do? So those are rules of conflict. Okay? So the rules of evaluation and the rules of conflict. These are the two rule studies in Ilm al-Rijal. Okay, so let's see the rules of evaluation, taqyim. These rules are used to evaluate and define the narrator's status, whether he is trusted or not. Okay, so we are trying to find out. These are applying the rules. As mentioned previously, that the evaluation of the Rijali could be one of three types of knowledge. It could be either narration, ma'rifa waqi'iyya, you saw, you smell by yourself, first-hand information, or second-hand information, secondary, like ma'rifa zahiriyya, someone told you, and then you have the third one, ma'rifa ijtihadiyya. So, as mentioned previously, the evaluation of the Rijali could be one of the three types of knowledge, either based on the personal experience with the narrator, that is called real knowledge, or based on the testimony of one who had the real knowledge, and this is called apparent knowledge. or no, or it could be conclusion based on an intellectual process of investigation. And this is called ijtihad or deduced knowledge. So these are the three knowledge. So whenever a mujtahid gives a taqeem, it could be A, B, C, one of these three. Therefore, the evaluation of the narrators found in the Encyclopedia of Narrators is one of these three types of knowledge. The principles of evaluation, which will be studied, led to the third type of knowledge, and most of these rules were derived from the works of the early ones, mutaqaddimin. So ijtihadiyya, the intellectual deduced knowledge, comes from the work of the mutaqaddimin or the narrators mostly, and these rules must be proven to be valid and also proof, so that the conclusion derived from using such rules is also a proof. The process of verifying these rules is done in the highest level of Rejaal studies. But at this level, we will briefly mention these principles. So we are going to mention briefly principles, but arguments of these principles, logical arguments used to define these principles, are used in the higher levels of ilm al-Rijal. Some ulamas, they give bahth kharij in ilm al-Rijal, higher level, as the fiqhi dars in ijtihad. There are scholars, they give, like Sayyid Ahmad al-Madadi, he is one of the scholars in Qom. He gives the bahth kharij, the student of Sayyid Sistani and Sayyid al-Khuyi. He gives bahth kharij in ilm al-Rijal, higher level. Okay, the process, the evaluation work done by the mutaakhirin or the later ones was ijtihad, the third type of evaluation. There is a difference in the opinion of the scholars regarding the evaluation of the narrators through the words of the Rijali. And based on those opinions, it is concluded how strong that evaluation is. Okay, these words of the narrators, how strong they are. Like, what should we consider it? There are three opinions which are derived into 5 directions, 5 subcategories. The first opinion is if the evaluation is a testimony, then based on the two witnesses, what will it be considered? If the evaluation is a testimony, then based on that, 2 witnesses are required. So if a narrator narrates a narration about a narrator, okay, let's say like Zurara says Fulan was trustworthy and Zurara was living with that person. So what happens now? Zurara has given me first-hand information. Now, what will happen here? After that, I go and tell somebody, I heard Zurara, who was living with this person, who said he's an okay person. So the testimony is narration. So I am telling someone else. So in this, should we consider these narrations, these testimonies as a narrators, or no, as testimonies by witness, which requires 2? Or should we consider this verification to make it properly? I verified a narrator. So should I consider this verification? Should that person consider my verification? A narration, so 1 person is enough, or a testimony, someone else needs to be with me, 2 people. So in testimony, you need 2 witnesses. So is it a testimony or is it a narration? So if narration, 1 trusted person is enough. We said this before. So is it a narration? 1 person is enough. Or is it a testimony? Then we need 2 people to verify a narrator. So let's see. If the evaluation is a narration, then if an evaluation is testimony, then based on that, two witnesses are required in order to be valid in the evaluation or the verification. If the evaluation or a verification is a narration, then based on that, one trusted Rijali is enough in order to be valid. And if the evaluation is ijtihad or deduction, so based on that, it is not valid. And every researcher, every mujtahid must do his own ijtihad. So these are the three directions which are general directions. What is the evaluation? What is the verification? If it is a narration, then we will, one is enough. Narration of trusted is proof. If we are considering this guy is testifying the credibility of that person, then I'll need one more person, because testimony needs two people. Or no, is it an intellectual work? Then I can't rely on it. I have to do my own work. Let's see what's the fourth and fifth. They said that if the evaluation, so we are going to now go further detail. If the evaluation is ijtihad of a person specialized in this field of Rijal, expert like Sayyid al-Khoi, like Sheikh al-Tusi, like Sheikh al-Najashi, these were experts in ilm al-Rijal, not a regular mujtahid. So they are ahlul khibra. Then it is valid. It is valid to those who are not specialized in this field. So it's basically taqleed kind of thing, okay? You are not expert, but you are a mujtahid, but your expertise in ijtihad is not as expertise of Sayyid al-Khoi in Rijal, okay? Obviously, because not every mujtahid can do everything. So there are some mujtahid, you don't have to be a scholar of ilm al-Rijal. You need to know how to use ilm al-Rijal to be mujtahid. But you don't have to be a scholar specialized in ilm al-Rijal. Even in the time of Sheikh al-Tusi, Najashi was more specialized than Sheikh al-Tusi. So you are not looking in a mujtahid that is he expert in ilm al-Rijal. However, if he's an expert in ilm al-Rijal, this gives you more satisfaction. So basically, if somebody is not expert in ilm al-Rijal, he will refer to someone who is more expert. Then it is valid to those who are not specialized in ilm al-Rijal. But if you are specialized in ilm al-Rijal, you have to do your own work. And finally, if the evaluation is besides being ijtihad, okay, the conclusions was made with some added personal factors or some personal satisfactory factors, then this type is completely not valid. So you are giving testimony, but you are adding some personal perceptions. No, you have to be very precise when testifying. You can't add your personal emotions and personal things into this, into your testimony. You have to be very peculiar, very specific whenever you give a testimony. Okay, so now, what does Sayyid al-Khoi say? Sayyid al-Khoi, Quddasa Sirruh, says, the evaluation of the mutaqaddimin, especially the famous four of the early ones, is considered as a narration. That means one trusted person is enough. The second type, okay, so we said 1, 2, 3. First was testimony, second was narration of trusted. So he says we will take it as a narration. Yes, he is testifying about somebody. He's giving a evaluation of somebody, verification of somebody. But he is a narrator. He's narrating what he heard from the previous ones. So al-mutaakhirun, the later ones' work is considered ijtihad. So whenever we doubt, in the words of mutaakhirin, it's ijtihad. Whenever we doubt, in the words of mutaqaddimin, it's a narration. And this is all for our session today. Thank you so much for attending. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.